Hi everyone, it's Mariana Swallow here, and I am the Speak Easy coach. I make speaking and presenting easy for you, one speech or presentation at a time. This month we're talking about icebreakers, those little questions or activities that you get asked at the start of a training or a workshop or a meeting to get people moving and the discussion going. What I want to talk about today are the do's and don'ts for using icebreakers. So, first off, do use icebreakers with a smaller group. Ideally, if you're going to have everyone share an answer, 12 people or fewer in the room. Now, this is not to say you can't modify this for larger groups. You can, and I talked about that last week, so feel free to check out that video. But if you are working with a larger group, say 13 or more, and even into the 30s, 40s, 100 or more, don't have everyone go around and share an answer, or heck, even at that point, don't have everyone go around and introduce themselves. You are going to eat into your precious working time. But what you can do is modify the icebreaker for larger groups, and I talk about that in the previous video, so check that out. If you are going to use an icebreaker, it's great if it can tie into the theme of what you're talking about or to one of the topics you're discussing. But make sure that you're using an icebreaker that is befitting of the whole group. Know who your audience is. I'll give you an example. My business partner, Randy, who some of you have seen here on this channel or on my other blog posts, Randy was once delivering a guest speech at a college, and he obviously didn't know who was going to be in the audience, but he made a reference and was asking the audience for their input, and he said something about chili. Well, there were foreign exchange students in the audience, and they didn't know what chili was. And try describing chili to someone who did not grow up in America, and you've got a task on your hand. So make sure that your questions are going to meet the audience where they're at or are befitting of everyone in the audience. Now, some of my don'ts, okay? So number one, don't use icebreakers unless you modify them for a large group. If you have 30 people go around the room and answer a question, you're gonna be there for a while and you're cutting into your working time. The other thing, think about the questions you have as icebreakers and ask if they're really appropriate or if they're a good use in this room. So I have heard some really bad icebreakers. One of the worst icebreakers I ever heard was, what was the most disgusting meal you've ever had? Well, you're inviting people to turn our stomachs right there. And what was even worse was the person asked this right before a lunch break, so nobody wanted to eat by the time they got to lunch. So asking people to share negative information or stuff that might just be too gross, leave those questions out. The other horrible icebreaker I've heard was, what was the worst thing you ever did as a child? This can get into some pretty touchy areas, and honestly, I don't think you should be asking anyone to disclose too personal or too offensive information. Now, some people, the worst thing they might have done was squish a bug, but for other people, you never know how a question like that can go. So if there's any doubt, leave it out. I would definitely leave that question out. The other don't I want to share with you around icebreakers is don't force your audience to do something they don't want to do. So for instance, I think one time I used something like, what was your first concert, or what is your favorite movie? I had someone in there who refused to answer any of my icebreaker questions. And when you get someone like that, you just gotta let it go. If someone says, oh, I really can't think of anything, that's fine, just let them go. Some people are really intimidated by speaking up in a group, even in what's a relatively safe setting and a friendly setting. So know that sometimes you gotta just know when to cut bait. So if someone is very resistant and doesn't want to participate, let them go. Or if maybe they're just neurodivergent or non-neurotypical, or they're just shy and don't want to speak up, even in a safe environment, just go ahead and let them go. Say, that's okay, thanks, and move on. All right. I'm Mariana Swallow. Hope this was helpful. Take what works, ignore the rest, and happy speaking.